it's going to include some of what people have seen in the past. But Cello, we're going to ask you to record this. So we've had several issues recording it at our end.
Yes, it started now, and I will not touch it. I'm keeping the fingers taped to the desk, so I cannot move them.
Good. So we've got about half an hour for that, for the first part of it. So it's then going to lead into the workshop, and I'll go through the workshop, but it's going to be looking at digital transition challenges. We're going to do some brainstorming across a few different categories. We're then going to look at how digital lamps can help engage people, garner support across utilities. And then we're just going to touch upon considerations for use out in the field or elsewhere. Okay, so I'll go through that into the workshop session. But as we have this first part, which provides the overview, we're going to open it up for questions as we go through. I think Pat will specify whether they come at the end of the presentation or not. And I'm going to take down some of those questions or observations and try and fit them into some of the categories that we'll explore in the workshop. So I'll hand over to Pat, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the link in for the mural that I'll get everyone to join when we get to the workshop part. All you'll need to do is click that link and enter as a visitor, and then I'll get you to follow me around that mural as we familiarise ourselves with it before getting into the exercise. Okay, so that'll come.
This will be in the chat, just so people know that it'll be in the chat.
It'll be in the chat, that's correct. Okay. Patricia, right. I'll leave you to get going. Yep.
Hello, everyone. I am sorry I couldn't share these videos with these presentations before. I really tried. It was impossible for a number of reasons, and extra work coming up in the end of the year is the main one of those. I have two very quick presentations. I will share them with the group, put it on our Teams channel after we're done. And there are some links in there that might be useful for you in case you want to undergo your own story map journey. But part one is Team 2100 AMP and the use of story maps to do it. I'll try to be as quick as possible. So what is a digital lamp? Really to start with, it is basically your alternative to your standard static document that we see, your PDF, Word, or any other type of word processor that you might be using. It's a digitized, interactive, easy to access, easy to read, easy to use tool that can help you solve many problems. In our case, it was aimed at solving one of the biggest problems that was people weren't using and reading it enough, because your standard document, it can be heavy, very lengthy, and yeah, not everyone has time to go through 70 pages of amps, especially when you have several of them. In our case, we have over 23 amps. And then also it helps you leverage your database. So you do have one source of data, so you avoid problems such as losing data or making any mistakes while you transfer from one spreadsheet to another, from database elsewhere, and so on. Why did we choose story maps? So just a long story short here, we assessed several possibilities from industry existing applications or softwares to building our own. We ended up with three main options that we assessed, did a meeting pros and cons analysis on. We ended up going with story maps. Just for your benefit, the other two options that we had were Mendix, and that's IBM's low coding solution to build applications, and developing one of our own, because we have been developing a couple of things, from scratch with our engineers/developers. Our decision was based on the development time, the level of difficulty to do the digital lamp, how much we were able to maintain it, the cost of doing it, the looks of it, of course. We also wanted, tools that were already available to us that weren't going to be completely new. And we also had an issue of legacy, which for us was very specific to Team 2100, because we are going to have to transfer those amps at the end of the program because we are a delivery partner. But basically, story maps do tick all of those boxes. And so just going into the experience of building a digital lamp with story maps. It is an extremely user-friendly interface. It's amazing how easy it is. Anyone can do it. It's very intuitive, very quick to learn. Of course, the first time you do it, it does take more time. So I did find myself exploring a lot, going into forums, watching a couple of videos, but that was basically for the first 2 or 3 weeks when we were actually exploring layout options and looking at what we could do. So questions were coming up and answers were really easy to find. Once we chose our layout and structured, but just sort of like defining your formatting rules per se. Once we had that in place, it was very easy to go with. And also there is the map function on ArcGIS Online, which was basically where I had more of a learning curve. So it does consume more time when you're doing it for the first time, sorry. It's easy to do it, but depending on how ambitious you are and what are the things you want to do with your story maps, it can become more and more complex, but it doesn't need to. Ours are very simple, really very simple. The possibilities that story maps gives us, so it allows you to use multiple layouts from predefined, so you can choose a predefined layout and just put your info into it, or you can customize their templates, which is the list that you see here on the right. And I have some links with examples here that you can explore, see which ones you like. We will look at the Team Turn 100 one, and I'll give you the examples of the templates that are in there. You can use interactive maps, so I found that to be very useful for past utilities that I've worked with, especially with distribution and collection systems, especially with planning for capital interventions on those. And it allows you to embed virtually any type of content that you want. So you can embed videos like Vimeo, YouTube, or whatever that you have a link that you can reference. You can embed images. I will say you do need good quality images or they'll be very small. And you can embed literally any type of link, and it could be linked to an API or anything else. So for example, if you're using Power BI, Tableau, or any other thing, or if you have a CMMS operations dashboard that you can access through a link, you can embed that into your AMP and visualize it through there. You can also merge or embed other Esri tools. In our case, we are using, for example, Esri dashboards, but you could also link it to Esri's Survey 123 app and web maps and any other Esri solution basically you can use with your story maps. I will go back to this and show you the layouts at the end. I'm just going to get to our last slide first, where I'm going to talk about some of the limitations. And basically, these limitations are not things that you can't do, but they aren't as easy to do as some of us or most of us would find in your word processor. So with regards to embedding tables, it's not like you click a button and then you open a table that you fill in, but there are multiple solutions, and I listed 2 of the ones that I found to be the easiest ones. So you can load the table as an image, but then it's a static table. But you can also make it look more, how can I say, it looks better and fits better with your text if you build it on Excel or any similar software. And then it does sound difficult, but I promise you it's very easy to do. You just save it as a web page, and then you open it, you copy the code. So you open it in your browser, you press Ctrl-U, your code will appear, you copy that, and then you paste it with using the embed option, which is those 2 little, I don't know how to say in English, sorry. When it comes to embedding, so data-driven, sorry, I'm missing a word here, data-driven tables and charts that are linked to your database, it does start to become a bit more sophisticated. So there are a lot of solutions, and I tested all these three. So one of the solutions is that you build your tables or charts on ArcGIS Pro, and then you load them as images. The facility here is that you don't have to go elsewhere, export your data, build your table, and then come back. But you do need to have an ArcGIS Pro license and be able to use it or know how to use it to do that. And then they are still static. If you want them to be interactive, then you can use Esri's operations dashboard, which is what we used on our AMPs. Very easy to use. Does take a couple of weeks to learn, but once you do it, I can build today 10 dashboards in a day if someone tells me what they want, what they need, or if I know what I want, what I need. Or you can use virtually any other software that can host your charts or your tables and embed them as a link. So for example, like I said, Power BI, you can build your charts there, or Tableau, and then get that link. You just need a place to host that. So if you already have charts hosted anywhere, you can use those to embed them in your story maps. The one thing that is probably the biggest limitation for me is when it comes to exporting them to PDF. So as of today, and they do promise, Esri does say they're working on it, you can't export all of the templates to PDF, so which does create a sort of a problem to printing story maps, which we all should be avoiding for sustainability reasons anyway. But there is, I think, 1 or 2 templates that allow you to do that. So if that is a requirement for you, do look into it and check what are the templates that allow you to do that, and be sure to use those. Now I'm going to switch to showing you our AMP once more. And while I do it, I will talk a little bit about the templates, the layout templates. So the template that you see here, I'm not going to go through the whole AMP because that can take a while. Just basically show you the capabilities. The template that you see here is map series, so there will always be the template name up here. As you see, the map is interactive, and you do have the ability of, while you scroll down the text, you could change what you see on this is your main stage, right? There's this other one that is a similar one, and I'm sorry, it is in edit mode, but this is basically our assets. As you can see here, I do have a filter activated. Let me just deactivate it. So these are our asset types, for example, walls, embankments, and high grounds. As you can see, we have a lot of walls, a lot of greens, but I could also choose to see per exemplar types, and I could also choose to see which ones are meeting my crest level standard of protection target. I could just see my asset type, so they're all defenses in this case. But let me just keep on the asset subtypes to show you the filtering option. So I have a lot of filters that I can see here. I'm going to just choose this one. So I want to see all of my walls, which is one of my asset types, that are of a condition of 4 or 5, which is one of our asset condition metrics. And if I activate that filter, it shows me only those assets. So I can basically create filters to see anything that I want, any cross of 2 or more attributes on my asset system. This one is looking at a dashboard. This is an operations dashboard within a map series, so a story map within a story map. It's actually 3 story maps. So the first row is one, the second row is another, and this one, it's not a story map. It's a operations dashboard, which allows me to see basically field information, asset condition, defect analysis information, and I can look at them as to how they appear on my assets. As I filter, as you can see, everything changes with it. You can have anything that you want to see, and that helps us plan for example, maintenance campaigns or specific interventions, or look at what are the top 10 drivers that we're seeing in those assets, or what are the top 10 high significant defects that we're seeing in our assets, so that we can make sure that our activities, be those maintenance or CapEx activities, are addressing the issues that we're finding. And the beauty of it is it's all coming from our database. So our teams are going to the field, they're using tablets, they're capturing data on the field, it's going straight to the database, and it's readily available for us to do those analysis. I do have another one, which is our plan. So basically our campaigns, as you can see, for this flood cell, we have 398 assets. And this is about how we are planning to, I want to say, intervene on them over time. So we do have 20 that we're working on this year, between this year and next year. And then for next year, we want to be looking at 95 assets, and I can look at them through the major parameters that helped us make the decision of when we are going to intervene or look at them to gather more information to plan for our specific activities. There are multiple filters that you can apply. I can look at just the period of 2021 to 2025. I can look at only the ones that have a condition grade of 3, and of course it's taking forever to load. I promise you I'm clicking. I think I need to stop my video because there you go. Internet responds a bit faster. So the map does change accordingly as I go through it. And then just one more example for you, which should have been here. I'm sorry. I promise I loaded it earlier. I don't know what happened. Well, it's the map series, and I think I have another map series open here that I can show you.
That's okay, Pat. While that's loading, I'll throw it out to people. If you do have any questions, or you just want anything clarified or comments to make, throw those out now. You can use the hand function or just speak.
There you go.
How long did it take you to develop what you have so far?
So the longest time we spent on was in actually exploring the possibilities of the tool, because I had never used it. So we spent about 3 weeks, and that's not full time. And by we, I actually mean I spent 3 weeks just exploring the possibilities and having weekly meetings with someone who has worked with those in the past, just to, gather a second opinion on whether we think that works or not for our purpose. And then once we chose that, we were working with, so if you assume your content is ready, I'm going to get to timelines later on the second presentation, but it's basically to transfer all the content from an existing story map Getting a lot of noise. Is it just me?
Somebody has something going on in the background. There you go.
Thank you.
If this
Sorry.
isn't going to come up, Patricia, I mean, you could go on to financial
Okay.
planning.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. I wasn't going to go into financial planning because there isn't a lot of information there, and this was
Sure.
more around
It's
understanding.
proprietary probably too, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
but but in terms of your asset management plan, you've basically said what's the impact of this from a financial standpoint, and you have stakeholder and other supporting information.
Yeah, yeah. So stakeholder is it basically takes you to our stakeholder. It's just not loading. I don't know why. Oh, there it is. It just takes us to our stakeholder engagement plan. It gives us a link to that document, and the specific one for the policy unit, which was being developed at the time we did this asset management plan. Because this is a separate document, it would take a whole other story map to build that. But yeah, so let me just,
I'll field a couple of questions as well, Patricia, that have come in. So Jonathan, you want to go first?
Sure. Maybe I missed this, so forgive me if I have. But what did the process look like for getting Esri adopted as a platform for this in your organization? So how did you convince the organization that this was the best tool to use?
We already had it. So in our case, we are using an enterprise license. There are two types of license that you can get. One is a public one, which is free. So if you were looking to convince someone, I would encourage you to try to use the free one to build a sample and maybe, show them what it could look like. But I don't know about licensing costs because we do have the enterprise license, and that wasn't something that came up as an issue to us. So the cost was literally just the cost of time taking to develop it. I do have, I think, some links on my other presentation. Let me get to that.
I guess the reason I ask, so Tacoma Water has Esri, a pretty robust Esri actually tool, but we also have a lot of other disparate tools used for various asset management pieces. And I think there's a lot of disagreement in our organization, like what's the best tool to use for different stuff. And so there's not a lot of, I think on the governance and like oversight side, there's not a lot of buy-in to using Esri. So I was curious if you had any of those hurdles to try to get over.
No, not at all. Because our organization is already using it, and the Environment Agency is also using it. So exploring it for asset management plans. So there's a chance they're going to do all of the national asset management plans on that tool too. So it was a no-brainer for us.
Maybe we take away from that, Jonathan, is a question for the National Environment Agency colleagues of ours. And Rebecca, we could probably do this just to see if there was any reasoning behind story maps and Esri being the preferred choice. And there might be just some detail behind that could help you, Jonathan. Okay, we've got another question from Chris as well as you go into your next presentation. Pat?
Great presentations and materials. So couple questions. So first one is, I know Pat, you talked about the the score around the condition, like 1 to 5 band. Like, did you have the overall risk combining with consequence side of the equation? So that's my first question. Second question is around the maturity of your data. Did you have to do some additional data cleansing or clean up to get to where you are to sort of automate that linkage?
I will get to the data management in the second presentation, so I'll leave that for the second presentation. And when it comes to risk, what we were assessing here in our decision-making framework was flood risk. We have a flood risk indicative tool or an indicator tool. I think it's indicator tool. which looks at annualized damages from based on asset failure, because the types of risks that we have were potentially a lot different than the ones that you would look at. So yeah, we do have that, but I don't have that in the maps yet. So this is an activity that we're looking to undertake in the future to create a layer for that, which also comes down to database management. But it is a part of our decision-making framework, and it amounts to strategic importance.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I just have one quick last question. I know Esri, we have Esri as well, and we use Vastly for linear assets, like the pipe, basically. How is it doing with vertical assets that has multi sort of hierarchy layers within like a point asset, basically?
Yeah. So when it comes to point assets, in our case, we call them active assets. We don't. So the map feature is more, to us, it serves more of a purpose of understanding how things are spread across the map, because our area is super big. Whereas I would imagine in your case, you have some specifics spread across your system, and then a whole lot of them within your treatment plants.
Yes.
But the thing that comes that could be of use is leveraging your database and using the tool to analyze your data, or just showing your data. So I think when it comes to that, the dashboard is a much more powerful tool to analyze than the actual maps themselves, unless you're looking at, for example, where are your pumping stations that are failing, or what types of failures do you get in specific regions, and maybe you can make some cross of information, geographical information. But I think it's very specific to the size of your operation, how your teams are organized, who's inspecting what, and so on.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And Cello had a question as well, Pat, and then we can get into the next pres.
Just a quick, when you were designing dashboards, did you start with the looking at the previous sort of hard copy asset management plans to get inspiration, and then kind of worked with the team to
Not at all.
No? Oh,
no. Okay. We actually did those from scratch, because it was, well, for us, it was a combined process. When we did those, it was part of a pilot project, and we were trying to understand how the extra data that we got from many of the projects that we had could help us in improving our decision-making process. So those were not part of our previous asset management plans just yet. So we did a huge campaign to go to the field and gather those additional data sets that we knew we could, because we had the methods to gather that. So that's basically the asset defect data that you see there in a database format, which is very important database management for this. And then we explored possibilities. Like I said, once you learn how to do it, you can build 10 of those dashboards in a day, and just pick whatever is of interest to you, what you think gives you most value.
Thank you.
It might just be worth saying the structure of the AMP broadly followed what the old AMP document or the previous AMP document was.
Yeah.
But no, the information that's conveyed is completely different. Yeah. Cool.
Okay. So just going in, I'll try. Can I move on?
You can, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'll try to be as quick as possible because I'm over time already. So license requirements. If you are really interested in this, I do recommend you go into those two links here. And within one of those, I don't remember which, there is a link to costs. So if that's of interest, you can get the organization or the public account to view. This is to build story maps. I'm sorry, to view story maps. If your story maps are public, and that means everyone in the world can see, provided that they find the link, or that they find your story maps through Esri's webpage, no license is required. However, if you want to share your stories only with your organization, then you need an enterprise login. I do suggest you contact your IT or your GIS team for specific requirements in your organization, but everything that I came across suggests that provided your organization has an Esri license, you can get an enterprise login at no cost to view story maps, not necessarily to build story maps. To build story maps, you need a specific user type, and that there could be a cost to that, but you shouldn't need a lot of those. When it comes to system requirements, I'm not going to go into those into a lot of detail. They're just here. You just need a browser, and if you're working in an enterprise, you need your enterprise portal that has some specific requirements. Some of those are listed here. You need to be thinking about firewall settings and domain requirements. So you need a single DNS to build your story maps. I would say that sits fairly with IT. Just talk to them. It's what we did in our case. I'm just assuming you have an IT department. I'm sorry if that's not correct. Coming into the timeline, the actual timeline to developing an AMP is similar to that of developing it in a word processor. I didn't find it a lot different. The things you should allow time for is, choosing your template. So explore your options. If you're doing it for the first time, we had 3 weeks to choose our templates. Setting your formatting rules, so your heading sizes, your colors, and deciding how it's going to look like. If you think of that in advance, it saves you a lot of time going back and changing the whole thing afterwards, which is what I had to do. And then some time to develop your web maps. So those are the maps that come with your story maps. The first time you do it, it does take longer. If you are an ArcGIS, even basic user, it should be fairly simple. I had never used ArcGIS in my life, and I managed to learn how to do that within 2 weeks. Definitely not part-time. I was actually doing it at night just for fun to see if I could learn, and then I could, and then I went on to build it. And then if you want to merge in some of those additional features, such as the dashboard, allow for some time also for you to, pick your templates and see how that's going to look like. So for us, it was 3 weeks exploring the templates, and then 2 weeks to not full time, so a few hours over 2 weeks, transferring the content from my existing AMP to the story map. And then during those 3 weeks, so those two activities happened in parallel, I had one person helping me, so working part-time, developing my base web maps. This was for the first one. So once you set your maps, and that's what you're going to use for all of your asset management plans, all you have to do is replicate and change. So for example, if you're doing one AMP for one asset type and then another AMP for another asset type, you set your template for asset type number 1, and then you just need to change the features for asset type number 2, and that is extremely quick to do. This is not taking into account the times that we went to the team and talked to them and they gave us feedback and we changed it. This is basically development time. So I would say 5 weeks is a fair amount of time to say you can get an asset management plan done in 5 weeks. If it's your first, it might take a little longer, but after that, you could do them a lot faster than in 5 weeks. Not accounting for the time to develop the actual content of the AMP, of course. Resources. I see basically 2 options as a minimum. You could have more people, but as a minimum, you need someone to build the content, so to actually put the text in there. And your web maps. If it's a tech-savvy person, that's good enough. No previous GIS experience, it's okay. It's good if you can have a go-to person for your initial questions, or you're going to be, on those forums. and you do need someone on the background managing your database.
I'll just jump in there, Pat. Scott's got his hand up with a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pat, this is brilliant. On the content, of course, this assumes that you have good data and information in order to populate this and to put it into this system, right? And maybe you had complete data. I kind of doubt it, but if you so your approach is put in what you have and then kind of work on that underlying content, condition, risk, other information, and then just this enables you to basically update easily and basically make it more of a living type of document. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, it's going to be as, I don't want to say as good as your database, but the better your database, the better the results that you can get out of it.
Thank you.
And so option 2, which is quicker, is you have one person building the content, so actually getting the text in there, and someone else who I'm calling a GIS user, so basically a GIS analyst, could be a junior one, that's what we had in our case, to build your web maps and your dashboards. You have to be in constant contact, and again, you need someone that is managing your database, which if you are already working on GIS and if you have enterprise GIS, you probably already have someone managing your database. You just need to get them involved in the process. Now, I wanted to just get into the database and data management. If you're building your AMPs on Story Maps, you want to consider static versus live data. So, for example, condition data, it changes over time, right? So when you're building your AMP, let's say you're doing your 2020 AMP, you have certain conditions for your assets. You want to put those into your AMP. But in 2021, those might change, but you still want to capture the 2020 AMP data. So you want to make sure to create layers to duplicate the data that you want to have a data date against it. So you need to be thinking about database management for AMP purposes. And this is sort of something that we came across later in the process, but also consider the use of query layers to use static and live data in maps and dashboards. So with time, as you evolve with that, you're going to get historical data. So if you use query layers, you can start, those queries can allow you to pick the historical data so that you can understand through multiple, it could be dashboards or that spyglass where you see the time evolving, or other web app applications where you see how things evolve with time, and that can also help you with decision making and assessing the performance of your system just in general. When it comes to database management, it is key for long-term use of Story Maps. You could just, replicate your data, build your static layers for your 2020 AMPs and then for your 2021 AMPs and 2022 and so on. But it's important that you think about it from the get-go, because you could really optimize your data management if you think about which are the fields that you need or want to have a date against, or what do you need to duplicate so that you don't, replicate your database over and over again every year. I would say identify someone that will be responsible for database management and involve them in the development of your AMP to think about that with you from the get-go. And it's also very important to have a database that is fit for asset management purpose. So this is one of the challenges that we encountered. Our asset database wasn't built for asset management purposes, and one of the the outcomes that came out of this project and another project of ours too is that we are going to restructure our database to serve those asset management purposes. And it's basically just rearranging things. So things like considering the use and the access of historic data in the future. So adding those data dates attributes to some of our tables, considering database size requirements and limitations of your organization. In our case, it wasn't an issue, but we did investigate it because with time it could become significantly heavy. Also think about how your different databases will be linked. So for example, if you want to pull data from your CNNS system, I don't know, it might be that you store it in a different DNS. So you have to think about those things. Again, things you want to involve IT on. You could very much just get an export from them and create your own static layers out of it. But if you do that, it will not be live data. So think about potentially building APIs to bring your data in, or it does get very technical once you get into those details. It's basically around opportunities. It's not limitations, but good things to think about. And also consider creating some layers that will be dedicated to your AMP. Again, those could be your query layers. So I do have a small example here of the types of things that we use that are inputs and outputs to our AMP. So linked to our asset list, each asset ID should have a maintenance log, an intervention log, so things you've done in the past, your asset condition information. So each one of those will be its own, for example, table. Your cost database that will help you plan for your maintenance and interventions. And your AMP outputs are going to be your maintenance plans and your intervention plans. So all of those, it's interesting to think about all of those, what needs to have data against it, what doesn't, what do you need to replicate every time you create a new AMP, and things like that. And that's all I had. I hope that answered the database question. If not, can I ask you to ask again? Was it Dan?
Chris Wu.
Chris, sorry.
I mean, that sort of answered my questions, but I mean, as other organization faces, I mean, Scott sort of asked the same questions about the readiness of the data maturity that we challenges with all the time. I mean, we don't have condition information for all the assets, so sometimes we use agent for condition. So I don't know if that sort of conversion is done automatically with the systems, or you kind of have to do extra steps to make sure that the data is synced between the systems.
So in our case, most of the data come from Environment Agency's asset management system, and they do have robust processes to gather that data. We can't say we trust 100% of the data that is in there, but we're treating that as a separate issue. So when it comes to asset management planning, we're using what we have and always keeping in mind what are the risks, how much can we rely on that data, and what can we do to mitigate where data quality or accuracy isn't to the standard that we would like it to be.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Cool.
And that's all.
We've got one more question that's coming from Yige.
Hey, I just want to maybe talk about what Chris questioned. I think we had the same issues. And one thing we figured out probably is when you build a dashboard, maybe dedicate a dashboard for a data quality part. Because if you already have the dashboard and people will just take that for granted, but if the data quality is actually part of the overall dashboard, that will always be there and people can always refer to it. That has been helpful to us.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Yiga, for that comment.
Cool. I mean, a lot of those comments there, I've recorded some of those as we go over into the mural board now. So you'll see some of references to your initials, etc. Just to show where I've captured that. Thanks, Pat. Cello, I'm not sure if you want to stop the recording now, so you've got that recorded, and then start the session again.
Okay, let me just do that. Let me just make sure that we do that. Hang on just a second.
That's cool. While Cello's doing that.